AO Review family, keep it high, keep it tight. It's Jay Morris, the Review Guy, back to bring you another video. And it seems like we haven't done an album review in a bit, and so comes along another album. Well, this is another newly released album. It was one of the ones that was released on June the 20th, which was last Friday. And we talked about some albums that released then, and we're moving forward to talk about some more. So, we're talking about Jungle Rot's self-titled album entitled Jungle Rot. So, this was released, obviously, July 20th, 2018 on Victory Records. And if you're not familiar with Jungle Rot, I don't really blame you because they're a death metal band that has been around since 1992, it says. And prior to this review, I had not heard of them either, but I was looking at new album releases and I stumbled upon this one, and the reason this review didn't come out right away is because I went and backtracked through the catalog of Jungle Rot and wanted to see if there was maybe something I was missing, because I have to say, this was a pretty weak release in my opinion. It Jungle Rot, to me, after looking at some of their past work as well as this album, they really just seem to me like the death metal band of death metal bands. They really seem like they're not really trying to push it in a new direction, and I wouldn't have an issue with that if there weren't a lot of other bands that were kind of doing the same, being on the same wavelength in the genre. But listening to this album, the first track, considering this hadn't been a band I had heard about before, it was one that I was kind of into, I was interested in, and after the first track I was like, wow, this is a band I can get behind, this is a band that I can get into. But as the album runs its course, when you get these just pummeling guitars and drums and vocals that are just these death metal gutturals, very kind of Cannibal Corpse-like, it sounds like classic death metal that has been updated to a modern feel, and that's something that I do say with a lot of kindness, is that this does remind me of some of the classic bands, such as Cannibal Corpse, and to be honest, I just felt like this album got redundant pretty fast. It got very repetitive. After a while, I wasn't really that into the overall sound of the album. It was very, it's fairly short. It's only 38 minutes, 53 seconds. So it's not like this is the type of album that you got to listen to for like an hour straight. And I'm by no means calling this a necessarily bad album. I don't think it's a bad album. I think it's a very listenable album, a very bearable album. I just don't think that there's anything about it that really sets it over the top. There were no tracks on the album that really stood out to me as like, wow, that's just a really good track, except maybe the first one, and that could be just nostalgia considering it was the first track that I had heard of the band. But then after, I think that the track listing really hits a hard place where it's sounding the same throughout the entire album for the most part when it comes to kind of mundane death metal. And while this band is obviously very talented, they've obviously had a long run, the work on the album is fine, the mixing on the album is fine, but that's the thing, everything's just fine. And for that, I just have to give it a 5 out of 10, because I can't say it's below average, I can't say it's above average, because it literally is the classic definition of middle of the road. To me, I think that this album does what it's intending to do fairly well. It's a good death metal album if you just want to listen to death metal, but I just feel like there's bands that are doing it better and doing the classic sound more justice, with bands like Cannibal Corpse still making music. I would get it if this was maybe like a revival band after Cannibal Corpse disbanded, but these bands are still around, they're still kicking, and to me, Jungle Rot didn't really do anything with this album that I hadn't really heard before, and going back in their catalog, it really seems like they're just a death metal band that does death metal. They don't really try to push it above and beyond at all, and that's fine. If they want to stick to their sound, that's actually just fine. And for that, I give it a 5 out of 10. But I'd like to hear what you guys think. I'm going to post the album in the description below. You can go check it out in the end screen. You can find my previous video. Like, comment, subscribe. I will shout your channel out, and I'll talk to you guys next time. But until then, my name is Jay Morris, the Review Guy, and I'm signing off saying farewell.
Oh no, what your mama gonna say when I tell her that I wrote no more? It's just things not the way they used to be.